G.I. Joe is best known for being America's most highly trained special mission force, a group composed of the best from every military branch. On the flip side, we have Cobra, composed of equally interesting-looking evil individuals, but mostly a whole host of nameless troopers. I mean, for the most part, we're definitely not talking about a bunch of elite soldiers here, just a collection of bad dudes willing to take up arms against our real American heroes. Basically, a wretched hive of scum and villainy, or in Cobra's case, you could call them a collective nest of vipers. When it comes to Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world, two things most often come to mind. First are the iconic individual characters like Cobra Commander, Destro, and the Baroness. And second are the endless number of different troopers that fill out their ranks. From basic grunts to highly specialized operatives, Cobra is packed with all kinds of troopers. And while it all started in 1982 with the iconic basic blue masked Cobra soldier, it wasn't until a few years later when this soldier got a more unique and unified identity across the board as the Cobra Viper. And that's what I'd like to cover in this story. The Viper. All of them. So let's get started, shall we? Now, ever since the modern 1/18th scale G.I. Joe toy line started in 1982, all the way up to the last full active year of the Joes in 2017, there have been quite a lot of Vipers released. And so for the sake of not making an extremely long video, and more importantly, keeping my own sanity, I'd like to set a few ground rules with regards to exactly which Vipers I will be talking about. First, I will only be covering Vipers. So, any other specialized Cobra troopers without a Viper in their names, no matter how iconic, will not be included. So, sorry, no eels, snow serpents, or worms. And second, unless there are any significant noteworthy updates made years later, for the most part, I will only be talking about the first versions of every Viper released. So, no re-releases or recolors are included. And finally, only the basic versions will be included, so no officers or gentlemen either. And so with all that out of the way, let's get to our first one, shall we? And that would be 1983's Viper Pilot. Yes, this one took me by surprise as well, as I always assumed that the first Viper released would logically be the 1986 Viper. But here we are 2 years earlier. Despite being the first though, there really isn't much to say about the Viper Pilot, as he was basically the previously released Cobra soldier, this time with a silver Cobra symbol on his chest, and who was sold exclusively with a Cobra Viper attack glider. Next would be the Tele-Viper, released in 1985. These guys were the radio telecommunications operators of the Cobra ground forces. I can't say that the Tele-Viper was a favorite of mine off the bat, as he was easily overshadowed by the more visually appealing snow serpents and eels, released in the same year. But he did come with some interesting equipment, including an oversized helmet with a huge visor that acted like a monitor. I always found it quite goofy and at the same time kinda cool how words would flicker across their visor in the cartoon. Anyway, finally in 1986, we have the Viper. No, not that one, this one. So this guy was basically meant to be a refresh of the Cobra soldier. And at least visually, I would call this quite the successful upgrade. I also found it funny though that the Viper came equipped with a chrome-faced mask, reminiscent of Cobra Commander himself, which on face value would seem like a sort of homage to their leader. Seriously though, why the goggles? But anyway, 1986 also saw a major change in Cobra leadership with the introduction of the Cobra Emperor Serpentor, which resulted in poor Coco being unceremoniously tossed to the side. Given those circumstances, I always saw the Viper's design as a sort of dig at the poor commander, who was once a man, making his iconic chrome-faced look basically standard issue for the lowest rank of Cobra trooper. Aside from the basic Viper though, were two more types released that year, both vehicle drivers. The Motor Viper piloted the Cobra Stun and were basically described as individuals who may have most likely ended up as dreadnoughts had they not been more educated or ambitious. Strato Vipers are the best of the Cobra Air Force, and for good reason, as they pilot what was considered up to that point the most advanced powerful aircraft in their fleet, the Night Raven. Anyway, it's worth mentioning the cartoon episode In the Presence of Mine Enemies. A Stratoviper named Raven is forced to work with the Joe Slipstream in order to survive after both pilots crash on an island that is the home of Dr. Mindbender's latest creation, the Bio Annihilator. In the end, after realizing that her loyalty to Cobra meant nothing and that she was basically expendable, she defects to the Joes. That's so Raven. 1987 gave us 3 more Vipers in the Techno Viper, the Gyro Viper, and Ice Viper. And of the 3, the Techno Viper was my favorite because he was purple. But seriously, he did look like the coolest even if he was basically just a glorified repairman. Gyro Vipers are best known for piloting the amazingly engineered Cobra attack copter, the dual-rotor Mamba, and his big-ass visor. And finally, the Ice Ninja, Viper, who piloted the Cobra Winter Operational Light Fighting Vehicle, or WOLF for short. But seriously, what was up with this guy? Size? What do size have to do with winter combat? Well, at the very least, these guys were naturally resistant to the cold thanks to a special high-fat diet they were fed to help retain body heat. 1988 saw things ramping up with 5 more Vipers added to the fold: the Toxo Viper, Astro Viper, Hydro Viper, Secto Viper, and Star Viper. Now, this was the last year I collected Joes as a kid, so as a result, the only one I got out of this bunch was the Toxo Viper. How could you not pull this guy off the rack with that huge and imposing getup? And again, purple. Anyway, these guys were basically unleashed to literally stink up the joint, thrust into battle situations mainly to create a foul and unsuitable environment, thus giving the upper hand to Cobra. Not the most flattering job, but hey, it's a living. Astro Vipers, on the other hand, are on paper the next progression of the Strato Viper. There is nowhere else to go but up, right? But in reality, they're more like the Techno Vipers, as their main role is to make sure Cobra's satellites are in tip-top shape. Oh well, at least they love it up there in space, where it's cold and dark. Now, Hydro Vipers. Now we're talking. The demons of the deep. The elite of the eels. These guys are surgically altered to withstand common side effects of deep sea diving. Man, when Cobra puts their minds to it, they really go all the way. They even have synthetic webs implanted between their fingers and injections to stimulate fat cell production to provide natural insulation. And we have his mask. Pure perfection, if you ask me. Anyway, if you think all of this can't be good for one's psychological well-being, well, you're absolutely right, as they're often described as not even being human anymore. But hey, at least they're virtually unbeatable in underwater combat. Oh, and apparently, they swim into battle with mini manta rays. Anyway, remember Shipwreck's girlfriend Mara? I'd like to think she was an early test subject for the Hydro Viper project. Good thing she escaped though, before she was literally turned into a fish. Secto Vipers drove the Cobra Bug, which was an amphibious vehicle. These guys were in charge of patrolling the shorelines of Cobra Island. Unfortunately, they are collectively seen as a huge morale crusher due to their dedication to their job and constant patrolling, which makes relaxing on the beach an impossibility for off-duty Cobra personnel. And finally, we have the Star Vipers, who were literally the stars of Cobra's space program as the pilots of the Cobra Stellar Stiletto. Once again, these are further modified Stratovipers, now equipped with an electromagnetic shunt surgically implanted in the right side of their brain that fires off electronic impulses that stimulate their reflexes and heightens their awareness for split-second decisions during high-speed, upper atmospheric dogfights. Phew! Talk about a real jolt head. Anyway, it may seem that I might have jumped off the Joe train prematurely, as apparently Hasbro was just getting started on their Vipers. 1989 gave us 6 new Vipers: the Frag Viper, Heat Viper, Night Viper, Aero Viper, Track Viper, and the fan favorite Alley Viper. So the Frag Viper was Cobra's grenade thrower, which he did so in style with his custom hurling tool based on the cesta used in the sport of Highlight. This unusual contraption gave frag vipers the added advantage of being able to dispatch their grenades without alerting the enemy of their positions or the impending death from above, which would normally be given away by the muzzle blast noise of a traditional grenade launcher. Plus points to Cobra for creativity on this one. Next up, the high explosive anti-tank Viper, or Heat Viper for short, the Cobra Bazooka Man. Bazooka Man? And here I thought he was a flamethrower. Shows what I know. This would explain all those little rockets around his legs. And then we have another favorite of mine, the Night Viper. As per their name, these guys literally lived in the darkness, inside windowless barracks. The joke with Night Vipers is that all it takes to knock them out is to shine a flashlight on them. But you see, that only works if you manage to find one. The Aero Viper piloted yet another highly advanced Cobra jet, the forward-swept-wing, high-altitude fighter/bomber Cobra Condor Z-25. And while his helmet looked like what you would expect from a futuristic pilot, it's what's underneath that really sets this guy apart. What is up with that old-school pirate bandana look, complete with a neatly manicured stash beard combo? Is that a standard required look for this guy? And then we have another driver, the Track Viper, who piloted the less iconic his tank Mark II. And that's it. And finally, we have the Cobra Urban Assault Trooper, the Alley Viper, who despite his rather late release has become quite the popular Viper. Who knew that the bright orange and blue combo would be quite a hit with the fans? These guys are the Cobra equivalent of a police SWAT unit or British SAS or Special Air Service. And their ultra-stylized take on the classic riot gear used by these units only add to the Alley Viper's charm. Later Alley Viper releases through the years have given us muted down versions of these guys, but at the end of the day, it's really the orange and blue that remains iconic. 1990 gave us the Laser Viper, Range Viper, Rock Viper, and the infamous Saw Viper. You'd think that by this time Cobra would have gotten a memo that having a specific trooper specializing in lasers is kinda useless given that everyone and their mothers pretty much used lasers by this point. But these guys were more like spotters who used their lasers to lock in and guide heat-seeking anti-tank missiles or a guided bomb by riding their said lasers to intended unfortunate targets. Range Vipers are another favorite of mine, specifically because of their really weird head design. I mean, the bony skull is crazy enough, but exposed brains? Either way, these Cobra Wilderness Troopers or survivalists most likely didn't care what anyone thought about their look, given they mostly operated in isolation out there in far-off, unfriendly territories away from any support. Think Bear Grylls if he was evil. And speaking of unfriendly and harsh territories, I guess you could add mountains to that list, and that's where Rock Vipers operate, as Cobra's mountain troopers. And just like the Aero Vipers before them, yes, it is apparently mandatory for these guys to rock a mustache. And then you have the Saw Viper, aka the Viper who actually killed a bunch of Joes. Yes, while that was in reference to a specific Saw Viper, it's a scarier thought knowing that there are even more of those bastards out there in Cobra. Specializing in semi-automatic weapons, the Saw Viper, get it, is Cobra's resident heavy machine gunner, and well, he's quite good at sawing down the enemies, not trees, although you could argue he could do that too. Anyway, speaking of saws, I was wondering if any of you saw that little join button on my homepage. If you did, I'd like to invite you to join in on my channel membership. Basically, for a teeny tiny little price, you can become a special friend of the Toy Shelf, who can enjoy even more exclusive unscripted content, early access to the main episodes, and a more collaborative say in what stories I can tackle next. I know that there are a bunch of you who I've enjoyed interacting with week after week, so here's hoping we can level up on that. But either way, member or not, as always, your support is very much appreciated, so thank you. Surprisingly, 1991 only gave us one new unique Viper in the Sludge Viper, or Hazardous Waste Viper, who was made specifically to battle Joe's new sub-team, the Eco Warriors. I guess you could say that this guy was the natural upgrade from the previous Toxo Viper, who instead of specializing in spreading shit all over the place, this dude was an expert at shooting shit right at you. Ugh. 1992 gave us 2 new Vipers in the anti-aircraft trooper Flak Viper and the Cobra Ninja Viper. Anyway, you can imagine the amount of upper body strength it takes to be able to carry and literally fire off 2 rather large missiles off your back. My hat's off to the Flak Viper. And as for the Ninja Viper, recolored Storm Shadow with less accessories. Nothing else to see here. Moving on. Even if it wasn't the last year of the original run, 1993 was the last year to give us new and unique Vipers. 5 of them actually. First up, the Nitro Viper, drivers of the state-of-the-art Cobra tank, the Detonator. Nitro Vipers are what track Vipers aspire to be. Man, those new HISS Tank Mark IIs must really suck. Anyway, as humorously stated in this dude's file card, prospective Nitro Vipers are required to exhibit their ruthlessness by blowing up video game arcades and amusement parks. At this point, I'm not sure if Larry Hama was still writing the file cards, but I sincerely hope this wasn't him. Cyber Vipers are, well, cybernetic soldiers created by Dr. Mindbender because he needed 2 main things. First, highly intelligent soldiers who could handle dangerous bioengineering operations in his lab, and capable individuals who could keep his genetically enhanced mega monsters in check. Mega what? Well, I'm glad you asked. I present to you the Bio Viper and Monstro Viper. Now, if you thought that the crazy Dr. Mindbender would be satisfied with turning eels into Hydro Vipers, well, then I guess you clearly don't know the old doctor. Bio Vipers are the next evolution of the Hydro Viper, further mutating poor eel volunteers into, well, monsters possessing the sandpaper skin of a shark, the razor-sharp teeth of a piranha, and the strength and tentacles of a giant squid. I guess you could say that this was an aquatic version of Marshall Bravestar. Of course, Dr. Mindbender didn't stop there. For all you landlubbers, he created the Monstro Viper, basically further mutated range vipers, remember those creepy dudes? Crossed with the most ferocious grizzly bears around, rabid werewolves, and Bigfoot-like creatures. Wait, what? Where in the world did he find werewolves and Bigfoots? Man, Bio Vipers, Monstro Vipers, plus lab work? At this point, you'd think that the poor Cyber Viper had quite the hell of a job to do. Fortunately, he was not alone as he did get help from the Mega Viper, who was in charge of leading the Bio and Monstro Vipers into battle. And just to help the Mega Viper along, at least he had some specially designed armor made out of Play-Doh. And with that, ends the original run of the Real American Hero toy line. The following years would feature several half-hearted and generally unsuccessful attempts to keep the G.I. Joe brand relevant until the 25th anniversary breathed new life into the toy line in 2008. Still, Hasbro did manage to release a few more unique Vipers during those dark ages. But given I wasn't really collecting Joes at this point, this next part won't be much of a deep dive but rather a quick doggy paddle over what's left, so let's get going. The next set of new Vipers came out years later in 2001, all reuses of previously released action figures. We got the Cobra Fast Blast Viper, a recolored Heat Viper with a new head, described as a nightmare with a bazooka. Yep, I'm pretty sure Hama was out by this point. And then we have the Shadow Vipers, who were recolored Laser Vipers. These dudes are experts at camouflage, who covered themselves in a dark powder-like substance that makes them virtually invisible to ground radar and infrared sensors up to 24 hours. Powder? I don't know, man, that sounds pretty dumb. And finally, Sub Vipers, former Sludge Vipers who are now underwater demolition experts. And that's all I care to say about those guys. 2002 gave us 2 more Vipers. The Shock Viper, yet another reuse of an older figure, this time around though, the G.I. Joe Flamethrower Commando Ice Cream Soldier. Yes, that's really his name. That being said, there really isn't anything too shocking about these guys, just some low-level soldiers who were apparently a bunch of pyromaniacs. And I guess it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to assume that they liked ice cream too. Neo Vipers are, well, new Vipers, the next generation actually, bioengineered to withstand extreme heat or cold. They also took the red pill. 2003 introduced 4 more Vipers. The Pit Viper, another infiltration specialist, at least this time without the need of using some mysterious dark powder. Sand Viper, desert troopers that came with pet lizards. And lastly, a couple of convention exclusives. The Air Viper, a Cobra Air Force trainee. Hey, you gotta start somewhere. And the Swamp Viper, amphibious assault troopers. I don't know, you'd think that these guys would come in green. Blue definitely doesn't scream swamp to me. The next two unique Vipers came out in 2005 with the Medi Viper. Okay, finally, an actual useful Viper. I mean, over 20 years into this toy line and it's only now we're getting a medical Cobra specialist? Oh well, better late than never. And then we have the Jungle Viper, a rather unspectacular jungle warfare trooper. While this original version wasn't much to write home about, he was spectacularly reimagined years later into an awesome looking figure. But we'll get to that in a bit. And finally, just when all seemed bleak for G.I. Joe toys, 2008 came along with the 25th anniversary line and newly designed 1/18th scale Joe action figures to revitalize the franchise. And while for the most part the 25th anniversary stuck to the tried and true formula of giving us upgraded versions of classic Joes and Cobras, every now and then they peppered in some new characters, and such was the case of the Cobra Para Viper. I mean, given how many parachutes were deployed from exploding jets and copters for years in the cartoon, you'd think that Hasbro would have come up with a specialized Cobra paratrooper by now. But, well, here we are in 2008 with the very first one. But I have to say, in my opinion, it was well worth the wait. The Cobra Para Viper was one of the first 25th anniversary figures that I got. Despite having no nostalgic roots, I couldn't resist. He just looked so good. Granted, when fully equipped, he had like zero mobility. I didn't care. He was an automatic insta-buy for me. 2009 heralded the very first live-action G.I. Joe movie, The Rise of Cobra, and a whole new toy line with a brand new basic Viper that looked, well, meh. To be fair, they did look a little better in the movie. Most of these new Vipers were basically recolors of the same molds with different accessories, but I guess they're all worth enumerating. First, we have the Elite Viper, who was probably the most normal looking of the bunch. He was also re-accessorized into the Desert Viper, now with more dry brushing and a few tan highlights. But if you wanted more colorful Vipers, I give you the bright red Crimson Neo Viper, who looked cool but unfortunately got sticky over time. And the green Nano Viper, who humorously came packaged tangled in some killer vines. And then we have the Terra Viper, pilot of the Cobra Mole Pod and who was basically just a monochrome version of the 25th anniversary Crocmaster. I guess points for resourcefulness? And finally, even if this guy is an update of a previous Viper, we did get a better Ice Viper as well. No more size this time, just much more appropriate winter gear clothing and a cool ski pedo. Anyway, 2010 gave us two more Vipers. First, the Urban Combat Trooper, the Street Viper, which was basically a re-release of the Elite Viper, this time packed in with a Tiger Snake vehicle. And another significant update to a previously bland Jungle Viper that is well worth mentioning. This new Jungle Viper was a complete reinvention, sort of taking inspiration from the Night Viper as a starting point and loading him out with what can only be described as an awesome futuristic looking ghillie suit and a big ass sniper rifle. So yeah, instead of getting down and dirty with the Joes on the jungle floor, this guy is strategically propped up in the treetops, motionlessly waiting for his unfortunate target to get into view. This is a perfect example of Hasbro really updating a bland concept into something special. In general, I'm not much of an army builder, but I did get a number of these awesome dudes. In 2011, Hasbro fortunately continued with their creative streak with two unique Vipers in the Volcano Viper, who piloted the Lava Pod, a repack of the Mole Pod, used for burrowing deep inside volcanoes to, I don't know, cause eruptions? Anyway, a few minor parts switched out and a fresh coat of bright orange paint, and we get the Hazard Viper, another unfortunate dude who works with hazardous materials, and more specifically, the mysterious Compound Z. And what exactly is Compound Z? Well, I can't really tell you, but all I know is that this strange substance basically turns dudes like this guy into this, the zombie viper. I mean, if you're gonna do monsters, why not zombies? And last but not least is possibly one of the most equipped vipers in the Cobra ranks, the Data Viper. I mean, look at this guy. The Data Viper was released in 2013 as part of the toy line for the second live-action movie, G.I. Joe Retaliation. And at this point, Hasbro wasn't even trying at giving their toys any decent characterizations or descriptions. So as cool as this guy looked, the best I can give you is this descriptive blurb found at the back of his card. Data Vipers are technology experts who use advanced tech gear to attack, sabotage, and spy on the G.I. Joe team. Using an attack drone, a Data Viper prepares to strike a G.I. Joe squad, but the G.I. Joe team spots the drone and open fires. Poor drone. Oh well, and that should cover it for all the unique Vipers Cobra has basically cooked up in the past 40 plus years of the G.I. Joe toy line. Or did I miss any? If I did, please do let me know in the comments below. Like I said, a whole lot of non-Vipers were left out of this one. So if you want a part 2 covering them, let me know by giving this video a like and tens of thousands of views. Come on, let's give these Vipers some love. God knows the Joes won't. Anyways, speaking of love, how about a case of some brotherly love from this unlikely duo? Brothers from another mother, the Joe buddies Alpine and Bazooka. You can check out their story over here. Or if you want other Joe stories, check out this playlist over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back for more.